No, I'm not going to tell anyone. You know what people will say if they found out I tried to fuck a lady boy and it turned out to be a lady girl?
Yes, that's how I'm starting this fucking thing. I am Billy Bobsack, and I am joined by the Lord Otter.
I am the Lord Otter, and I'm in the middle of a fucking traffic zone right now.
And we are reviewing Fiendish 1, 2, and 2.5. Oh boy. One of my favorite comics.
Really? We couldn't be divine or anything? It had to be fiendish?
It had to be what?
Like, it couldn't be anything nicer. It had to be fiendish. Like, something as horrible as being fiendish.
What, the name of the title?
Yeah.
There's literally fucking demon monsters ripping people apart.
Oh, okay. I see how it is now.
Alright, we're going to start this off with just basic impressions of all three. And Otter.
Oh, well, in short, I love them. And I'll go ahead and preface this by saying, well, if the traffic dies down right next to me. Sorry, it's a bit of a hectic time right now here in Otterland. Anyways, I think each one gets progressively better than the last. I think issue 1 starts off pretty strong. Issue 2 gets even better, and issue 2.5, I think, outdoes that one as well, even though it's a smaller story. I think Irene is getting progressively better with each one.
Yes, albeit, for me, Fiendish 1 is pretty good. There's some things I wish that were added. Fiendish 2 is solid through the whole fucking thing. 2.5 is a little chapter story.
Yeah.
And it's pretty good for what I was expecting it to be, which is just a little backstory. It's all crammed in, kind of goes really, really fast paced throughout it. Just
Chapter
little moments.
2.5,
and also...
Yeah, chapter 2.5, it feels like a smaller story. Like, it does feel like backstory, but there's a lot there, too. There's a lot that's compacted in there.
Yes, but also, how do I put this? See, because this is like my 5th or 6th reread through the first 2, and then my second reread on 2.5 done today. Actually going back and rereading through especially the second one, some of the moments that are mentioned in that one, you do actually see in 2.5, like little story bits that you find out or hear about, which was pretty fucking good. I mean, she had some planning to this.
Frederick's saying that Fiendish is a better name than Fluffy Bunnies. Yeah, you may have a point there, Frederick. That's fair enough.
Yes. But overall, I enjoy this. There are some things I hope that she improves. Like, I have no problem with using modern swear words and stuff. There are a couple moments in the first and second one where she could have phrased it more medievally, more fantasy.
Yeah,
saying that
it does suffer a little bit from modern dialogue and more of a rustic medieval setting. I think for the most part it works, but it occasionally falls into that trap of where it's like every other character is just saying fuck for the sake of it, just to be kind of like dark and edgy.
Some of it, to be honest, that doesn't bother me. It's when we get into the spoiler parts, I'll directly address a couple moments where I'm like, you could have. I mean, I get you can say that, but you could have phrased it in a way to make it fantasy medieval. Like, how do I put it? This ain't really a big spoiler.
Sometimes it sounds a little too modern.
Well, the one is where the dude says, "Are you on your period?" And I'm like, well, you could have rephrased that to be like, "Are you on your moon blood?" or whatever. That type of wording.
Even if it was something like, "Are you bleeding?" or "Are you menstruating?" or something like that.
Right. And it's not like too often. I actually like in the second one that she gives Yaomi like an actual distinct voice, like the way she speaks. You know who I use the voice for?
Who's that?
You know, fucking Kate from Fallout 4, the Irish bitch.
I'm trying to remember. I haven't played a whole lot of Fallout 4, I'm
So
guessing she sounds pretty like stereotypically Irish or something like that.
yes, that's what I imagine Yomi sounds like.
For me, how she reads in my head, Yomi sounds kind of like this. She sounds like a very kind of like a peasant girl you would meet in something like The Witcher 3, where they're all speaking in avs and ors, and we're going down to the pond, eh? Sort of like
Yeah.
that type
What
of
does a
speech.
stereotypical Irish sound like?
Yeah,
That's why I'm going. It's like a young version of like Kate from Fallout 4, like stereotypical Irish. That's what I hear. And I
a
actually
bit of
like what she
Irish.
gave.
You could also argue it's kind of like Cockney a little bit. For
Yeah.
that's kind of the tone I hear whenever I read her. I'm trying to remember. Is it in the first issue? Does she really have a distinct voice? Because I really remember it
No.
in issue 2. Issue
Well,
1, she
she's
sounds a
barely
little
in there.
more in the background.
Yeah, she's barely there. She doesn't really speak much in the first issue. In the second one, she's there a lot. Also, Casimir, the voice I use for him is it's one of the voice actors from Skyrim, like the stereotypical Nord.
Oh, really? I'm
Yes.
actually surprised a little bit.
Well, I mean, they're kind of in like a Viking kind of area. It's like always snowing. It's in the dead of winter. You know, he's using fucking axes in the first issue, like double bladed
Casimir
axes.
makes me think of how he reads in my head. I think of one of my characters, Steel, if he learned how to say fuck a lot. That's kind of how Casimir reads in my head.
Okay, and then the younger one, I'm blanking on his name. His
It
cousin.
is. I know his name. It's slipping my mind. Iskall. That's it.
Iskall. Okay, now this one's gonna throw you off, and I know it's gonna throw you off. I use Krillin from Dragon Ball Z.
I can see that. I can actually really see that.
I'm like, this is Krillin.
Oh,
That's what I
gee.
did first. Yeah, that's what he kind of reminds me of. But overall thoughts on character, without being too spoiler.
I mean,
We're
so far
fixing.
the actual cast is pretty small, but I mean the characters that are in there, like in the main cast, I think are all captivating in their own ways. I mean, it's pretty obvious that Casimir is your protagonist. Really, he's kind of like established very early on as kind of like the person who's being hurt the most in the situation, who grows very quickly, and then you're kind of seeing him being joined by both Iskall and Yomi as he just kind of like goes along. That said, there's a lot to each of them as well. Iskall has kind of like his own past with sort of like the curse he was kind of like born with, and then Yomi with her status as a Dave.
Yes. All right, we're gonna switch over to spoilers because I want to get really in depth with this. With the first one.
Spoiler warning, everyone. If
Yeah.
you are still doubtful about Fiendish, I personally would recommend it.
Yes, I recommend it as well. Buy it. It's fucking good. Now on to spoilers, in which we're gonna start with, of course, the first issue.
Oh, yes.
And I can actually start smart.
Yeah, I actually have this first issue of Fiendish right in front of me, flipping through some of the pages, and we get some of this gorgeous artwork that you see on screen right now.
Also, I gotta give it up for like the art. I'm not a big fan of how she draws hands, but like fire, she does really well on. You'll see it later on. I think her fire effects are pretty good.
I actually have a
She
few
draws
issues with the coloring, but I think she gets better with that as she goes along too.
Is it in the first one? The second one, I thought the coloring was solid through.
It's mostly in the first one. I think it feels a bit too washed out in places. The second and third issues do a much better job of giving a nice sense of saturation and contrast. It's really just the first one where I have a bit more issues with the coloring.
Yeah, we start the story out with Casimir waking up and his brother. It's basically saying, "Hey, you need to get the fuck out of here." And then there's like a chick walking out with her tit out. She's basically saying, "Casimir, could you save us?" And you see like the the demons. Matter of fact, I think I forgot to take a picture of the
Do
demons.
we ever know who that chick is that has her tit out? She's only
No.
there briefly, and we
I
don't hear any more from her, at least so far in the story.
I think she just got ripped apart. The thing is, there's a scene in like the second issue. I don't know if it's supposed to be a random woman or that chick getting ripped apart. But I really like this. And the opening is basically his village got wiped out. His brother gets killed, and then he ends up running. And then we cut to 9 years later. Load.
Oh, internet. Oh, how we love thee.
Yeah, and Casimir's kind of a dick, but you kind of understand that these villagers are assholes anyways to him. All of them. But they're pretty much looking for Mars. Is that his name? They're looking for just a random villager who got lost.
I think it's Lars. Lars.
Is it Lars?
Yeah.
You might be right. I don't remember. Is this
I'm
supposed to be
pretty
Lars?
sure it's Lars.
Why does that remind me of fucking Star Wars?
I don't know off the top of my head. Lars is a familiar enough name to where it's like it feels like it could strike a few memories quite easily. I feel like I've heard it in a few different stories as well.
But I mean, and even in this opening, you get a good idea of who Casimir is. He's kind of an asshole. He's kind of doing this reluctantly because what's his name? His cousin is asking him to. You know.
Yeah, and another thing I'd like to mention about the story early on, you get a pretty good feeling of the dynamic between both Casimir and Iskall, who we learn later on are actually cousins. Iskall is a bit more kind of like he's a bit more on the timid side. He's not inexperienced, but he's definitely kind of more of an outcast, whereas Casimir is just weathered. He's essentially had enough of this shit from the opening panels, and as you can see here, what they are about to face. He's seen a bit more of the world.
Yeah, and he's also recognizing his familiar. His cousin points out that there's a hole in that, and he kind of goes, "Hey, I remember this. This is kind of familiar." Now, there is one scene that I think she should have added, and this is because in book 2. So, the spoiler is that his cousin Iskall is actually cursed, and when he touches people, him and that person relive like their worst memories and stuff. So the scene I think they should have added was them finding him, and then when they go back to the village, this could have been like half a page or something to add of like the woman's that man's wife, you know, either like being sad and stuff, but wanting to like hug him and thank him for at least finding him and bringing the body back and shit, and then her like stopping, you know, because she realizes like he's cursed and shit, and you just get a little bit in this one because it's really not until the second book that you get any hints that he has a curse and the villagers see him that way, you know.
This is something I can actually attribute to a lot of you can kind of break it down to a lot of creators, and especially when they're starting out on a series, they're still kind of finding their way with characters, and especially when it comes to like having more of the important character moments. Like it's something I know a lot of people kind of like hesitate to include at first, but it's like the more they get acquainted with their cast as it goes on, the more they expand on it. That's kind of the feeling I get here, where it's like it's more plot first, character second in some ways.
Right, but I think that would have been just an easy thing to add, and it would have made it better, because in the second one you do get that, but if it would have been better to have it in the first one as well, and kind of make you, kind of make you go like, what the? Why won't they touch him or shit? And why is he like, looking away or something when they do it? Kind of, something like that.
Yeah,
that's what
it's
I think.
more of a minor nitpick that could have easily have been fixed. I'm sure it's something. I'm willing to bet it's something that Irene and the rest of her team they probably looked at in retrospect and went, yeah, why isn't this here?
Right, but
That's my personal guess anyway.
Casimir is basically he's kind of a smart ass. The woman's like, and the way he's ripped apart, what animal can do that? This can't be normal. No shit, it's not.
Yeah, and as for Casimir himself, I get very much sort of like this vibe that he's kind of like a. You can see the influences between Berserk and Vinland Saga, especially with Casimir. He seems like kind of like a blend between both Guts and Thorfinn in a lot of ways. Has sort of like
So
that standoffish, at arm's length kind of philosophy, but there's the Nordic type of uh, kind of like visual design as well.
So I haven't read Vinland Saga, so I don't know about that. Uh, as for him being guts, yeah, he's kind of assholeish, but he's not like pushing everyone away. He does actually care for his cousin and wants him to learn and survive. Also, so she created her whole language. All of the sound effects in this book are in that language, which is really fucking cool. It's
It is
something I
really
love.
cool. I will say that it is a bit of an adjustment at first, especially if you're not used to it. You could argue it. I found it to be a little distracting, though I do like the extra detail there. So for me, that it's kind of a mixed. It, my opinion on that is a little more mixed, but I still like the fact that she created her own language and that it is relevant.
So this is why I like it. The sound effects being in the language. Just like I like Japanese sound effects because I can't fucking read it. And it just looks interesting on the page.
Well,
That's it.
where I
Nothing
take
more.
where I take a bit of exception is that with when it comes to Japanese characters as sound effects, usually there will be a translation kind of like hidden there somewhere within the panel, right, where you can
Yeah, but
kind
I
of
can
piece it
see why
together.
she didn't do it.
Yeah, I can
Because
see
it'd be distracting on the page. If you had
it
like little
would.
text for each one. I'm fine with it. It's uniqueness. Plus, I can still tell what the fucking sound. Like, this one's chirping sounds. I know it's chirping sounds. It's morning, very early in the morning. There's birds. It's gonna be chirping and sounds of the city. I can figure it out. And then the scene is that they're going to hunt the monster in the morning. They all go there. Then Casimir is basically teaching him like, hey, you need to like not look at just the ground, look everywhere else to figure this out. And they make it there, and then they meet the what's his name, the fucking like showman person.
Are you telling me they don't meet the demon hound first? He seems very
No,
friendly.
they meet the showman person who's just rambling on forever in the scene, so much so that all his dialogue is grayed out and doesn't even fully fit in the panel. It's like cut off and everything because it's useless dialogue in which he's just talking. And then you have Casimir, not enjoying it.
Am I the only one who actually read all the way through his dialogue before I read the reactions to it, even though it's partially covered up? I still wanted to read what he was saying before
No, I
they
read it.
everybody else went, ugh. Why should we even care about this?
I read it on all of them in my first reread last, or whenever I got it last year.
I mean, he's
Yes, I
basically
read.
just rambling anyway, but you still want to see what he's talking about.
Well, Casimir realizes, hey, it's too quiet, and then this fucking thing just jumps and starts wrecking havoc. I feel sorry for this dude because he was like a nice person. He just talked too much.
Yeah, and this has consequences later on, as we shall soon find out.
He's even begging for help, and then gets sucked fucking dry. This also why I like the sound effects. See, I know what's going on. He's sucking him out, so that's
Yeah, it definitely works for this panel for sure.
right. I love this scene. There's like, oh shit, he got drained. This bitch is screaming no. Tries to go to fight this thing, and it just rips her fucking arm off. It has no shit. Listen, this is an equal opportunity monster, It kills
Right,
the men and the women.
He's very equitable in his treatment.
Yep. Then we have the whole fight, and I do like the panel layouts and shit of the fight.
So with the last panel where she's actually trying to stab and it rips her arm off, I know this is very much a nitpick. I feel like there could have been a small panel right before this where it just has her arm reached out, where it's like grabbing onto it right before it rips it off. I feel like there's just a panel missing there. Maybe that's just my subjective opinion.
But I can also see where it's just it turns around so fucking quick that it catches her.
That is true.
Maybe it could have had a motion of it turning quick. That's how I interpreted the scene. Is it?
Yeah, it's very much a nitpick on my part.
Then you have the whole fight with this monster, and it has a tiny face on them. All these do, which of course is reminiscent of Berserk. Albeit, I don't think these are apostle humans or whatever. I do think they're just like some type of weird hell beast or whatever that's being conjured.
They feel more like animals, but they're also aberrations at the same time. There isn't like a malicious intelligence to them, at least not that we know of so far.
Right. I mean, one of the things that Casimir is flashbacking to is that all of the monsters that destroyed his town when he was a kid, all of them came out of one house. And I do think Irene did say on a live stream that we will actually be meeting the villain of this arc soon in like the next issue.
I know what's going to see who it will be.
It may be a character we haven't seen is probably what it's going to be.
Either that or it might be related to these hellhounds or whatever, because they do seem to be sort of like a recurring threat.
Well, no, these guys are. Like, that's what I'm talking about. They all came from one house back in the beginning of this story.
Right. So my theory is it's going to be whoever or whatever is kind of like behind these things. That's my theory as to who the villain is going to be. Now, as to what is, that's still up in the air.
There's the faces on it, and it's not really human faces. It is like fucking monsters.
I agree, Frederick. It doesn't look very pleasant.
Yeah, and also their blood, like aliens, like are acid and shit. However, when Casimir, he realizes that like it's not burning him, so he has some type of protection after his first encounter in his town from their acid.
Yeah, it's a question that, as of right now, is being left unanswered. It's a nice little mystery as to why he's the only person who isn't being burned whenever this thing touches him.
Right, because like it's blood and shit, you know. And I'm intrigued. I want to see. Because he was like covered in scars as well, if I remember correctly, when he was a kid. Look at this. This looks great.
It really does. It's a really sickly design, but it works. And I like the paneling too. It all kind of like presses down right into that bottom panel.
Right. She likes doing a lot of diamond. So here's the one weird thing I will say in all three of them. Have you noticed that there's no double page spreads?
Oh, I haven't noticed that actually, but I mean, now that you mentioned it, yeah, there are no double page spreads.
Because I had to stop. I had to stop when I was doing my reread, and I was like, you know what? I don't think I see a double page spread at all, which is kind of weird because you would think there'd be at least one in there.
You would think.
Especially since she's a big fan of manga and shit. Yeah,
yeah, because manga loves its double page spreads. And I mean, also looking at Berserk and Vinland Saga, both of them love their double page spreads.
Right. Oh, and I'll also say this. So her three inspirations is Berserk, Vinland Saga, and Vagabond. I see Berserk. I have not seen any Vagabond influence as of right now.
I see more Berserk and Vinland Saga than I do Vagabond. There's elements of Vagabond, but it's not near as much as the other two.
Right. Oh, and here's one other scene I wish was here. So before Yaomi, she helps the one other chick out, and the other young dude in her troop, tells her she needs to either do something or run. And then it cuts away from us, and then Casimir is like still fighting the monster, and the monster's on top of him, and she rides the horse into the monster. I do wish that she had at least a little tiny panel when he says, do something or run. I wish it didn't have to be a full panel, just like a little clip-on panel of showing like the horse or something.
Yeah, I will agree with that. Just because it does kind of feel like by the time we know what's going on, it's already collided. You kind of have to piece together that it was the horse afterwards. Like, even though it's still kind of like in the process of falling down, you can piece it together. But yeah, just that little bit of info, I think, would have just made it flow just that little bit better.
So here's what I'm coming. I understood it was the horse. It's just I felt like in between those scenes when it jumps back to Casimir from her, it should have left us on that have a little bit of little tiny over clip panel on that showing the horse. That way, when the horse's feet show up in that scene, it's her, and it's her riding it into the monster. So you already know. It's one little critique in the first one. Also love this drawing.
I really do.
I like Yeon. But she's basically just watched that one bitch's arm is ripped off and is dying. He's dead. The other chick she pulls out and she's just fucking dead or something. The other dude had his leg shattered. And then we get the final pages, which is from RAGNA. It cuts to. We get all 4 of the party members in this book.
Yeah, and the bit with Ragna, it's very much an epilogue compared to everything else. It's happening in a different part of the world, but we still get to see who this very voluptuous babe is doing with her fire magic.
So it's only 3 days away from him. It's not that far away from him.
Right.
Basically, what she's saying is she kills the hog, and then she's like, yeah, this thing has burn marks and shit. Like, some monsters are in this woods around us, because that's where they're heading to eventually in the second one. It's to her and her place. I love this fucking shot. Somebody like the sound. Like, even on the spells have the sound effects when they do them, cast them.
I actually don't think that's a sound effect for the spell itself. I think that's more of just a rune she's drawing to actually cast the magic.
Yeah, it's in the language thing.
Right.
Back to the book has got the thing. But the shit looks great. Then we start the second one. Do you have any final thoughts on the first one?
Not much, really. I mean, this is kind of like the majority of the issue itself. I will say that I think the reason why this is arguably my least favorite out of the bunch is that it feels like the majority of what's actually happening here is action. It's more or less just one skirmish, and it's setting a lot of things up, but we really don't get to see a lot of what that turns into until issues 2 and 2.5.
So
then
here's how I'm gonna put it. Book 1 is 3 scenes. You're opening, and then them and looking for the dude's body and stuff, setting us up. Our second scene is them traveling and then talking to that dude. Third one is your entire fight scene with the monster. That's what this first book is. If you want to break it down to actually what's being covered. Frederick, it's not really a complaint. It's just something I noticed in this book, and I understand why, because double page spread, I mean, you're losing page count on that if you're trying to hit a certain number. And I think this book is 50 something pages long. The first one. The second one's
not very long. The second one is about twice as long.
It's not 100. It's about 70 something in the second one.
Somewhere around there. Book 2 feels substantially larger than the first one.
Yes. And then, now, I'm going to give my funny backstory to this. So, I backed the Fiendish back at the end of the second campaign when it was closing out. Now, when I end up getting my cards, I end up getting this old woman, the trading card. And I was thinking, okay, So I read through the first one. And I was like, oh, they're gonna go back to the Astalad, that city you saw, and like he's gonna get help from this old ancient shaman woman, and she's gonna like tell him where to go and stuff. Help him. Boy, was I fucking wrong. I thought she was gonna be a nice old lady. No, she immediately starts out being like a fucking massive racist, like slaver.
She's not only a racist, she is a hardcore slaver.
Oh, and this is where you get her act. Let me go to the first one. Like she doesn't really have that type of speech that she has later on.
Yeah, it feels like she has more of a defined character voice in issue 2. It's more of a minor inconsistency I can point back to now, but you don't really notice it until afterwards.
Well, like I said, in the first book, she barely speaks in the first one.
Yeah, she's almost mute within the first issue.
Like, keep in mind, Casimir, I think, is the only character in the first book who even has inner dialogue, besides Ragna at the end.
Yeah, you get to know more about Casimir more than anyone. You know a little bit about Iskil, but even he feels like a side character in issue 1.
See, she's like, Halbrand, he was me mister. I just love her. She's like, the dead man, did he have bloodkin? She's like, no, he didn't. In that case, you'll be sold to a new master. Make yourself presentable by the evil. What a shock. I thought she was gonna be a nice old woman. But basically, she's trying to get sold to the other young dude who was in their troop, but he's not family, and also his legs are shattered and he's knocked out, so she's like, no.
And it's more than implied that for someone like her, she's likely going to be a sex slave. Not only does her master kind of imply it, Yomi says it to herself several times. It's like, yeah, especially Dave women aren't treated very well in this society.
Dave men aren't treated well either.
No, neither of them are treated very well.
Basically, she just, begs, like, she ends up asking. Her whole thing is basically her master, the one you saw get his body sucked out in the last issue. He was actually very nice to them and everything, and didn't treat them like slaves.
Yeah.
Kind of forgetting that when she's talking. Then she just basically asks if she can at least, go to the funeral.
Well, it's not only that. One thing I kind of noticed whenever I was reading through these issues and it started getting more into kind of like the whole Dave slaver issue, it's kind of a trend you notice with a lot of more modern fantasy, particularly with a lot of D&D derived fantasy, where it's like usually there's a tiefling race or something kind of like it where it's like or more demonic in nature. Usually they're discriminated against, and it's the racist metaphor, like sympathy storyline. And a lot of the time I always thought those stories were very heavy-handed. They weren't handled very well. Like I even like Baldur's Gate 3, but I do not like how the whole tiefling storyline is handled there. It's very like on the nose. Here though, there's a lot more showing than telling. You're seeing directly how these people are actually being treated within this world. And I will also give it this: they aren't necessarily demonic either in this world.
Yeah, because we're given in the back of your books, you're given like a little bit of world building in the back. So one of them's on the Daves. They're kind of just like peaceful folk that lived in caves. And the humans just said, fuck you, bitch, now you're my slave.
Yeah, I think it's implied in one of the addendums. It's saying that they kind of evolved from living in caves. They eventually breached the surface, and that's kind of how they started interacting with humanity and the other races.
Also, this is going to sound fucked up. They also can't reproduce with humans, so they do make the best fucking bed slaves. Just saying.
Which is why you don't want to be a Dave in this world.
Yeah, the women are usually like song or bed slaves, and the men are just like hard workers. Like they're getting they're cleaning out the sewers. Just saying. But you have him, and this is the scene that comes up after this one. where he's like, oh, Casimir went in town and shit. And you got this little dialogue with the peasants. Jesus fuck, look how ugly this motherfucker is.
Yeah, now that I look at the faces here, some of the faces here look a little wonky compared to everything else, but that said, I only even noticed this until I didn't notice this until now when you're actually showing it. Everything
That one
else
I like.
is pretty
She's just
solid.
making him like a really ugly peasant. He's not. He needs some work.
Yeah, it's that middle face.
But pretty much, you have like a little girl going around a cart who's like, "Hey, Daddy, he's the cursed one. You know, he's cursed and all that." And he's like, "Oh, don't get near him." Then you have him where he pulls up his little scarf thing, and I'm like, that's why I say in the first book, having that with the wife, they brought back her dead husband, and like having her like try to, or she was gonna go hug him or something, and he would she would stop herself. I think that would also help with this and here when we start getting that he has a curse or he's a cursed one. Has some intrigue. Did you have Casimir go to this blacksmith, Corvin? Of course, as all blacksmith, you have to be bald, beard, no shirt.
Yeah, this is also one of those bits where, again, I see some of the inspiration, or it feels like some of the inspiration is bleeding through here just a little bit. It's more in their interaction than anything. It's subtle though. That's what I really like about it. You also get some nice world building here with, I believe it's the Wraiths, isn't it, that he captures?
Yeah, so he basically says he wants Poroskan cleavers because his axes when he was fighting that monster, of course, acid was eroding them and stuff. He's basically like, yeah, I need them weapons. And he's like, hey, asshole, you can't afford that. So he just pops them out and he's like, yeah, these are wraith crystals, and they're very rare. Like even the shaman people can't make them or something.
It also seems like
not magic, it's out as well.
It also seems like there's something about them that wards off demons or evil spirits as well.
Yes. I assume Casimir's going to get these back later in the story.
It feels like a plot device at the moment. And right now, it feels like we're just being fed tidbits of world information. But yeah, I agree. I think they're going to come back later in some way. I'm just not sure how.
Well, also because his dialogue after he's about to leave, when he says, he'll give him the wraiths when the weapons are completed and he'll come back. I think the doesn't the blacksmith ask him like, do you think like the monsters that y'all fought yesterday are gonna are gonna be are gonna be coming more of them or whatever? And he's like, yeah, just keep them things close to you. Yeah. Also, like I said, she loves doing diamond panels. These diamond shaped panels over things.
There's a lot of angular panels just in general. This page probably isn't the best example, but when she emphasizes it, you notice it. Not in a bad way.
This is where I'm saying I love the fucking flame effects she does. Like, that looks fucking great. This is my favorite page in the entire series. It looks so good.
I also adore the paneling here. The panel layout is simple, but it works very well for pacing. It's like wide shot, close up, wide shot, close up. And you're getting a good contrast for like the present and her memory.
Yeah, this one's overlaying this one. This one's overlaying this one and that one. And then you got this little bottom one. And it looks happy. The coloring and lighting in this is fucking great. And that's her mother that died a while back. And that bitch, I think she died in the fucking wreck in the last book. We didn't really get to know her here. I don't think she had a single line of dialogue.
I have a feeling we won't know any more about them.
Yeah, so basically I'm sure we'll get more later on. But basically what we get in this is she asked the one witch lady if she can thank Casimir and them, and then shaman lady's like, "Oh, you want them to buy you? Well, that's not gonna fucking happen. Quit thinking about it." And then that gives her the idea of just trying to find them, just taking her chance out. She said it'd be rather be sold to them, or at least with them, than some random person that will make her a bed slave. Look at this.
I mean, it's fair enough reasoning. It is a risk, of course, but it's better than the certainty of being a bed slave.
Yes. I do eventually want to see her do crowd scenes, like heavily dense crowd scenes. So far in most of these books, it's been sparse. I do want to see how she's going to handle doing massive crowds.
Yeah,
later on.
that's something I've noticed as well. It feels like the scale so far has been pretty small, very much focused on Casimir, Iskall, and Yomi.
Yeah. Here's the male Dave. Just his pack horse. Look at that. See, she's even talking about how Bryn treated her like she was almost a human. She doesn't need to get used to that, you know. And then so the humans burn off their horns when they're babies. The Dave. And this woman's like trying to stop him because he's drunk as shit when he's trying to do it. And she's just getting the shit beat out of her.
It's not just that he's trying to take the horns off of the baby. She's even telling him that he's too young.
Well, she's wanting him to wait a couple of days, and also that he's drunk. So he does what any man does. He beats the shit out of him.
Yeah.
But I love the facial expressions in this.
I do really love It's right around here where you're really getting to see a lot more of the subtlety with how Rini draws faces. You're getting to see like the subtle inflections as she's kind of like looking out the horrors of what's happening before her.
Yep, and then she decides to steal the baby and tries running off. The dude eventually catches her and throws her down and shit. Then Casimir, he doesn't really want to intervene.
Yeah,
his cousin kind of forces it.
You kind of get a feeling it's like she doesn't really have much of a happy ending, at the very least at the end of this scene. Yomi turns out okay, but this poor woman, you don't really want to think about it.
Yeah, the poor woman and the baby, and then she gets caught. Casimir does. I mean, she gives this whole thing, her fake story, to make it out like why she did it. That she's like lying. You got him in his face there, and then he's just like, "Didn't I tell you to shut up about that, you pox-addled bitch?"
Now, this is something I really like because it's very much just him putting on an act, but it's another great way of showing you what the situation is rather than telling you.
Right, and he also spits on her and fucking walks away with the baby in one hand. And basically, Casimir, what is it? Iskall starts opening his mouth about the monsters and that Casimir knows them and stuff, and she's trying to join Casimir, and he's like, "Nah, I'm good. Fuck off. If you show back up, I'll tell them that you escaped and came here." He goes and gets his new swords, and that's when he gives him the. We get the light and dark wraith crystal things, which I do think we get to see one later on using this one, if I remember correctly. I think that's what he uses.
I think so. I'm trying to remember it. It's right around the end of the issue, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Also, I love this. But, his cousin's worried. He doesn't really give a shit, and he sees that she comes. And she basically, I do love the one part where she's like, "Listen, I brought all these supplies." And they're like, the cousin's like, "Where did you get that?" And he's like, she goes, "Oh, well, I snuck in the caravan and took all this stuff. The one dude who has his leg shattered, he wouldn't mind. Just stole."
Also, I'm going to point this out again, but I love how simple the panel layout is. Yeah, I'm in the middle of a traffic zone here. It's a bit of a perilous situation for a water weasel. Uh, the panel layout in general, I love how simple and elegant it is. You compare this to a lot of traditionally published comics in the West that are usually overcrowded with speech bubbles or this stylish kind of like one-page spread where it's all of this extraneous info just concentrated. Compare that to this where it's just you can easily read it. It really makes a difference.
Oh, and she tells him that he can he can use whatever she wants from the pack that she just brought, or if she dies, he can have it all. And he's like, "Yeah, what's stopping me from killing you and just taking it all now?" She's like, "Nothing." But she does go on and tells him about the monster killed her family, and that does have him make flashback, which I think these are his two little sisters or cousins or something.
I think they're his sisters, or yeah, they could be his cousins. Either way, it's a really adorable panel.
And that's what makes him actually go, all right, all right, you can join us. But you got to pull your own weight and learn to fight, And if you do anything to put us in danger, I'll kill you. He is an asshole, guys. He's an asshole. I think this is the... Oh, yeah. So, in 2.5, so they go from their cabin and they go to the cabin that his hunter, the dude who trained him, that's the cabin they go to, and they meet the Frostfang tiger. That's like pet Nina.
Yeah. So for context, folks, there we get to see Nina here, who ends up getting a bit more of a backstory later on in Fiendish 2.5. All we know about her right now is that she's a white fang, tooth fang?
Yeah.
And that she is their loyal pet, even though she's quite obviously dangerous.
She's a Frostfang.
Frostfang, that's right.
Now, here's one of the things I do not like. He says, "This is Nina. Careful not to talk trash about her. She understands. I do not like the word trash being used. It's too modern. It's too modern.
It feels a little out of place considering the tech level of their world."
Right. Like I just, and it's not that common in this book. It's just every now and then I'm like, that's too modern. Let's go more medieval with the speech.
I still see the style she's going for. It's very much a manga style where the actual setting itself doesn't really matter all that much. Characters are going to speak a certain way, but even so, it's like every here and there, it feels like she kind of crosses a line just a little bit.
So here's how I put it. Berserk, I don't really have any moment in the entire series. 14 deluxe volumes, 42 individual volumes. And nowhere in there that I go, that sounds too modern. Like there is modern type talk in there.
Yes.
Doesn't ever go that far. This also with her training.
With it.
She doesn't last long. I just love how sweet Isilda, you're back. That's why, by the way, when I do the Northern from Skyrim, that's why. Listen to it in your mind as like a Skyrim Nord.
Sweet Isilda, you're bad.
Yeah, right? So well.
I still
got
don't.
Blonde hair.
That's not how I imagine his voice, but it is funny.
And that's the entire book.
Hail, Yomi, let's go get some mail together.
But I love how she gets the whip, and I forgot to take the picture of it, but the little tiny, like, it kind of looks like her tail, but it's a whip thing, and she actually is decent with it. He still catches her and basically tells her, if someone grabs a hold of the whip, like, let it go. Don't hold on to it, it'll kill you. Yeah. Then we get this scene, and like this is where we get what his curse is, and I don't know why this isn't loading in right.
It looks fine on my side.
Maybe it was just how I took the photo, got blurred on the top for some reason. But she basically can't go to sleep, and then she sees E-School and then goes to touch him, and then him and her really relive like the worst memories that they had, or she's had, which is her family getting murdered.
I
Where she
love
hits
how this is laid out here. It's really great just seeing all of these fragmented.
oh,
I swear, I think these drivers are almost targeting this water weasel or something.
also, and this, I do think she does crying pretty well, drawing as well. I'll say it is the 2.5 artist. I think actually doesn't do crying well when we get there. But I love these. Looks great. And basically, her and E-School talk, and then E-School's like, "Hey, yeah, my father died in the town with Casimir's family when it got attacked." And she's like, "Oh no, I'm sorry." And he's like, "Nah, he's an asshole. He left when they found out I had a curse. When I was cursed." And then his mother also abandoned him, and that's why he went to Casimir. And when you'll see that in 2.5, but you see like a little flashback in this one as well of it.
It's one of the reasons why I like 2.5 so much. It feels like there's a lot of callbacks for stuff that's kind of told to you later on chronologically. You get to see
Otter.
how it happens.
So I'm gonna also recommend for you, Otter, when you reread this, you'll start noticing in book 2 there is a lot of stuff that's subtly mentioned in this one and subtly shown that you do see in 2.5.
That is
Like she
true.
did actually find it. Also, I love this drawing and little cute Yomi and shit.
It is really cute.
But she's basically just saying, hey, they killed, that monster killed my family and all this shit, and I just want to understand what killed them. She just wants to know. She wants to help them. And also, there's the whip I was talking about.
It's a
That
pretty sick.
everyone knows how to use it.
It's a pretty sick looking whip, I must say.
Yes. And it could be fun drawing. I kind of wonder if she's going to be kind of like the rogue of the group eventually, or something like that.
I kind of wonder that too. It almost feels like she could be that way. She's already a bit more secretive than everyone else. I mean, you could kind of break it down already a little bit. Like Casimir feels sort of like your barbarian or warrior or something like that. Yomi feels more like a rogue. I'm not sure where Isco would line up yet.
Ranger. He uses like bows and shit.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't think I took the page of it, but you also find out that you have these little spirits that go in and out of the astral plane. Dessert. And they like protect the trees, these little tiny like spirit things. I think I didn't take a picture of them. And when they first go into the traveling to that place, to the house, you get a little bit of info on that.
Yeah, and you get to see a bit more info in it along the back of the book, where it kind of explains a bit more of the different realms of their world, like the different planes, as well as like the different domains of magic.
Yes, and she is heavily pulling from like Eastern religions in this one. In 2.5, on the back of it, she explains how their like religion works, and it's very much like Japanese, like other Eastern. I know she's from Taiwan and shit, but it's very Japanese. The whole gods judging you and shit, and whether you get reincarnated or not.
Yeah, I don't know too much about like so many Eastern religions. There's parts that remind me a bit of sort of like the different tenets of Hinduism, with sort of like the cycle of reincarnation. I know enough about Hinduism to where there's sort of like a hierarchy where you eventually rejoin kind of like the great soul, depending on how consistently you lead good lives. over the course of centuries. I kind of got a similar vibe here with how she's setting up the world.
Well, the thing I'm saying is, well, look at Japanese media. A lot of it has the reincarnation shit as well, or reincarnation, or turning the energy, and also having gods judge you. I think that is strictly from like old Japanese shit.
Yeah, it's not strictly Japanese, but yeah, there's a lot of Japanese religions and beliefs that directly take from that idea, especially with reincarnation.
Yes, and then we meet. Go ahead.
It's also just a fundamentally fascinating idea to run with. I've seen it kind of explored in a few different fantasy properties as well. I think a good example is like Pillars of Eternity. You get to see sort of like how reincarnated souls can differ in each life. I think it's a fun concept to run with, and it seems like Rini is doing some fun stuff with it as well.
Right. And then we get introduced. We have Burmen, which are basically Neanderthals in our world.
They feel like beastmen in a way. I feel like a lot of fantasy settings have their variant of like Neanderthalic type thugs, more or less. These feel like that.
Well, they also speak like retards. Is that Frostfang? I hungry. I actually do like his insults. There's one insult that I will bring up that I don't like, but the other ones, like calling him a pretty boy and all this other shit, that fits. It still works. It's just when he tells him, if he asks him if he's on his period, and I'm like, could be Moonblood. Use some ancient words for period. Don't use period.
Even if he just said, "Is it that time of the month for you?" I think that would have sounded better.
Now I don't have the page, but Casimir throws a fucking like light flashbang in their eyes, and then immediately kills like two of them. And he kills two of them. His fucking cat kills one. Oh no, he kills one. The cat kills another, and then Iskul fucking shoots one. And then he goes up against this dude. I like these action panels. I like this one. Try me, pretty boy. Why are you so fucking pretty? You look like a whore I raped Gunska. That one I like.
I like the whole back and forth here between Casimir and this guy, because you get to see like three different sides to this guy in this one fight.
Right. And it's not a long fight. It is fun. I like the panel layout. I like the sound effects. Always love them. And like I said, he's a fucking ranger. Look, he's using his fucking bow. He's being a little prick. He's shooting at him while they're fighting. Yeah. But Casimir basically is like, all right, this dude's he's a bit crazy, you know. I'm gonna have to. Casimir gets cut in the, I think a little bit in the chest, but manages to get him down. Yeah, see, I don't like this one. How she
just a flesh wound.
Then you got the cat, and then this is when he's like pleading for his life, and just he brings up that the monsters also attacked his village and shit, and that's what makes Casimir keep the cat from immediately killing him. And then asking him questions about it, you know.
Oh, and then we get this fucking amazing panel here.
Well, before we get to that, the dude basically said he has a daughter in the main camp and it has a son. Casimir's like, well, he started off with saying he had a daughter, or no, saying he had a son, and then he's like, didn't you mention you had a son first? Now you got both. But the dude was basically saying, yeah, I'm raping and pillaging because that, our village got destroyed. And then Iskul basically wants him to spare the dude, you know. And where Casimir, like his naivety, you know, like just wanting to let the dude live, and Casimir's like, no, dude, like, we let him go, we're gonna have to watch our sleep because he's gonna eventually kill us. And
Hail, Herman in the chat.
Yeah, I'm not dragging him back to the other fucking town. No way. So he just he compromises and cuts his fucking tendons in his legs and tells them, well, it's in God's hands, you know.
It was a mostly peaceful solution.
Yeah, and then this is the one he shot at the beginning of the fight, E-School. He fucking gets up and then is about to attack him, and then fireball. And I love this drawing. I love the sound effects. I love the dude's fucking eye popping.
Every time I cast Fireball in D&D, this is exactly what I'm going to imagine now.
Hello, friend. You know, he's obviously a little bit scarred seeing a dude explode.
Just a little bit. It's
and
nothing
this is how
we won't get over, though.
So you have the actual text box in the language when they're speaking it, but you have the translated one right next to it. They have the fucking spell right here. I wonder who that could be. Could not be the redheaded big goth titty chick. No. Couldn't be.
I wonder if her name rhymes with magma.
I wonder if her name rhymes with ligma. Yeah, she basically burns the corpses, and you do get to see this dude's flashbacks. He grabs a hold of him, and he was telling the truth. He did have a son and daughter before, but they fucking died.
So you get to see pretty much his descent into, what would you call it, madness? Just not giving a fuck anymore, doing as he pleases.
Going to depravity. I love her flame effects. I really do. When we get to 2.5, I don't think his flame effects are as good as hers. The flame drawings. Then we get the most glorious panel. Sorry, you don't need to see nothing else on this page, just this. I continue, Otter?
There's two big noticeable things on this panel, and I gotta say, her eyes are quite ravishing.
But we basically get Ragna, who's talking to Casimir, healing the Nina, the Frostfang, because she gets stabbed by the Neanderthal character before. And then, I don't have the page, but she fucking, like, when she asks Casimir if he needs to be healed, it has, like, a little panel of her noticing the other two, and she's like, how does she say it? What are those? She doesn't even say who are they. What are those?
Yeah, just like this really cool, affluent gesture.
Yeah, and then he's like, yeah. It's his cousin, and he's like, oh, that's some stray Dave that tagged along. And she keeps calling her a toy, just saying, you're sex slave.
Yeah, like, look at the panel below. I'm not letting you bring your fuck toy into the house. Like, Jesus Christ, Ragna.
Oh, the story behind this fucking panel, or this panel right here. So, on a live stream, when she was drawing this on I think it was the Jack Show or whatever, and everyone was saying, hey, it looks like he's like jacking off to her and stuff, she's looking really upset. She was gonna change this, but everyone peer pressuring and saying, no, keep it, it's an inside joke.
Also, it's even funnier when you her, like, I mean, pretty much in every panel, her boobs are drawn to be like 2 sizes larger than any conceivable lady would normally have.
Chicks who have this type of tits.
I mean, yeah. But
there are doing.
Yeah, but I mean, probably not very common in this world. Let's be honest.
Well, also need to explain her race. Because I forgot to mention it earlier, but there's Espalians. Say it, Otter.
Espalians? I'm going to have to look up.
Look it up. It's Espalians, and then you have Ispalads. They're basically the half-elves or the Breton of her world, where they're humans, and the other ones that are very much supposed to be like elves. Fucked, and then this is what you get. The uber boobs.
The Espoliad? Something like that.
Yeah. That's basically what they are, and they are very much the elves of our world. Like, they're very adept with magic and all this other shit. They have big giant tits for their mana, you know?
You've got a lot of plot, a lot of character growth, you know.
Yes. All the character growth you can need. Right there.
The funniest
Very
bit
round-
about these whole panels, especially the one where it looks like he's having a bit too much fun in her direction, it's more than implied that they've kind of had something in the past, so it just makes this all the more better.
Yes, there's very much the underline that, well, I mean, he even says this, where he hesitates and says, yeah, and old friend. Totally not a chick he banged, you know? Totally not. Nothing
Well,
going on.
you can also kind of see it sort of like they may just kind of know each other to a certain extent, maybe not necessarily in the romantic sense. It's left a little open to the imagination.
Nah, I think it was romantic sense. Come on.
I mean,
Well,
yeah, looks are one thing, but suspension of disbelief, you know?
What would be the suspension of disbelief?
Suspension of disbelief in the sense that, yeah, they probably have a thing for each other, but nothing
Dude,
actually
there's
happened.
literally a flashback of them dancing. Irene, one of the fucking things for 2.5 that was one of the covers is literally him sitting in her lap, uh, like laying his head in her lap. The first thing he mentions to her, you know, is he dreaming and shit because he sees a woman. Come on, Otter. The hints are there. It's very obvious.
The hints are there, but it's not in context to what
Matter of
we're
fact,
seeing
he gets
story-wise.
pissed. She gets pissed when he sees that he has a Dave with him, which she immediately says is a fucking sex slave that he brought along.
Well, it's pretty clear that at the very least she has a thing for him, and well, as we'll see in 2.5, he has a bit of a thing for her as well. I'm just saying, I don't know if they banged or anything like that.
I'm going on the assumption that they banged. It didn't work out, but they banged. Come on, you telling me you wouldn't bang that? Really?
I mean, that's a pretty obvious answer, but what I'm saying is, let me put it this way. Honestly, it's not being said explicitly, so I'm just gonna go with the assumption that they haven't until this point.
Otter, the signs are all there. I don't know how you don't see this, but anyways, we end the second book off with Yelmy basically being like, "Is this something she wants to go through with while looking at the burning corpse?" You know,
James
and
says
then
you can buy those at the store.
what store are you going to? Why are you buying kits, James? But you know, Casimir actually comforts Easkell and basically explains that, you know, it isn't about what you want to do. You know, it's things you got to do to survive, which is kill people. You can't be merciful out here. Also, the reason why there's so many bandits too, it's explained in the world building as well, is basically the area they're in is kind of an outlawish territory. There's not really any major governing like royal or nobles or anything over them. It's mainly just isolated villages and shit, and then there's one citadel.
Yeah, so far it feels like it's just been kind of like small city states, if even that. Usually just isolated villages.
Yeah, it's isolated villages, and you got some bigger ones. That's how it's explained in the back of the book, which is one of those bandits. Then we start 2.5, which was written by Irene and then drawn by Michael Rushbrook, who got like third place in the art contest in the Fiendish 2 campaign. Got any final thoughts on the second one, Otter?
Second Final thoughts on issue number 2. I think overall it was a big leap forward for me. I really enjoyed issue number 1, but for me, issue number 2 is where I'm actually starting to get invested. And I think the reason for that is you're getting a bit more insight into characters other than just Casimir. Issue 1, it feels like it's there to set up the plot and also to give you a bit more of an idea of who Casimir is as a protagonist. This time around,
Right.
you're getting a bit more info on Yomi and Iskul, as well as Ragna, just a little bit. And I think everything around that just kind of like builds up more and more. And I really like the whole kind of like climax with the bandits. It's a nice small scale fight. You get some great gore with a huge fireball and some tits. What more could you ask for?
And they're because at the end of this, they're going to the village that he comes from in 2.5 and stuff. Because I think he's one to talk to the old woman you see in 2.5 that's over Ragna. To basically try to figure out what these demons are and shit. These fiends. We open 2.5, which is a little backstory one. Very, very fast paced. Basically, it picks up after the beginning of Fiendish, where he tried going to Astalid to get to his cousin and his mother, or his cousin's mother.
Yeah,
Doesn't really.
a lot of it feels like story that was kind of hinted at in earlier issues. It's just expanding on it more here. He mentions that he tried finding his mother earlier on in issue 1, I think. Here you're actually seeing more of what happened to him, along with some brief flashbacks that are given a bit more context here.
Right, and this is like what was his name? Dorvo?
I believe that's right. I forget his name off the top of my head.
He's
I am
the one
also
who-
fucking terrible with names.
I should have wrote this shit down. But that's the dude who eventually is the one who trains him. And then he wakes up to Ragnar. And when what is his first thing? What is his first thought, Otter?
Is she an angel or some sort of spirit? I believe that's what he says.
No. Read it right here.
She's so pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Is she
Basically,
a
he's
spirit
doing
of some
Anakin
sort?
Skywalker without
Yes.
saying it out loud.
And they only know each other for like 5 minutes, and then they're gone.
Yes, and then when she's basically complimenting his eyes, and then he starts crying. I don't have it in this page, but I don't actually like how Michael Rushbrook done the crying effect. It looks like noodle tears. It's one complaint I have in this one.
I see it right now. Yeah, it's like the tears themselves, they have a bit too much definition. They've got like a small border all around them. I don't know, it looks flat compared to everything else.
Right, and it's also colored really blue. But we'll show that. Overall, I think the art's pretty good in this one. I think Michael Rushbrook did good.
I think he did a really good job. It's just little bits and pieces here and there where I take issue with.
Basically, Casimir wants to get stronger. You know, he's going on his shonen character arc, so he wants to go train with Dorvo, be his apprentice. This one panel right here. Now, I watched them. It was already drawn, but they were coloring it. I actually wish they left this completely blank white because it really made him pop and stick out in this frame. I think actually adding the colored gradient colors and shit in the back kind of hurt this panel.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen the one that's pure white.
I haven't
really
seen the
popped.
pure white panel, but I can kind of see how it would make it better. It's a small issue I can see. Like it's a very subtle effect, but at the same time, yeah, I do think it would give a bit more of a better contrast there. It's a small thing for sure.
Also, like that the bookmark that we got in this book. Now I'm gonna have to bring up the bookmark because I love bookmarks. Bookmark is actually cut out of this.
Yes, I have it too, and it is quite nice. It's one of the first things I saw whenever I got my copies of Fiendish.
So we get like basically a training montage page of him like being taught and everything, and then Dorvo basically being an asshole to him, calling him runt and shit. So Dorvo basically throws him in there with the bandit. He's like, I've taught you a lot of shit, but you got to put it into practice. So this bandit dude tries to murder him, and Casimir kills him. It's his first kill. Also, Dorvo has like these. I think it's supposed to be he's got disease or pox or something, because he has like little things all throughout him, all over his body.
I believe it's a form of pox or something. It isn't explicitly told to you either, though. By the end of this issue, you're seeing that it's kind of like riddling his whole face and everything. You can at least get a good idea of what's actually killing him.
Right, and then basically Casimir is really pissed at him. Then we jump again. Like, this thing's really fast paced. And Dorvo they're at the campfire, and Dorvo like spikes his drink to knock him out, and then he wakes up tied to a tree, and he's like, all right, here's your final lesson, the last thing I can teach you. About how far away, there's a cabin in there. Either get there and survive, or survive on your own. It's your final test. So Casimir's he finds a cave and goes in there, and that's where we get the Frostfang that he fights.
Here we are, Billy Bob Sack. I'm gonna read off a few of these speech bubbles in the Skyrim Nord voice just for you, just because you said that Casimir reminds you of the Skyrim Nords.
Well, I'm saying the voice fits him very well when I was reading.
Here I am, freezing my ass off in a storm again. I just wanted to become stronger. I thought that would make things better. But what's truly changed? What am I searching for?
Yeah, it fucking works, does it not?
I don't know, man. Something about it just doesn't feel right to me.
Listen, here's the thing. You gotta actually pull up Skyrim. It's actual voice acting of the Nord. Take that voice, put it in your head, and then read it in your head. And it fucking works for him. Look, he looks like Norse. Come on. Hello, friend. I have fucking Krillin as Easkell, okay? You're having a problem with the Skyrim Nord?
Alright, time to pull out issue 2. Time to read a few of those as Krillin. Let's see if I can pull it off.
I don't know if you can do Krillin.
Let's see here. Leaving his forest? Gosh, the rest says
that's not
something was
Krillin.
outside the forest.
That's not Krillin.
Give me a bit of slack, alright? I've only watched like 12 episodes of Dragon Ball Z.
Alright, anyways, continue. He managed to fucking stab the Frostfang, and then immediately starts cutting it up, flaying the fucking thing, and start eating it.
That's also an
hearing
awesome
a little. Yes, this is I know she also did a cover as well of this, in which she was wanting to make it more and more bloody. See, I do like Michael Rushbrook. I do like how he draws. There's a couple things I think you can get better with. I think it's flames and tears. Everything else is fine.
Especially the tears. The more, like, since you pointed that out, yeah, they do look like noodles, kind of like coming out of their eyes. I noticed it a lot more.
Yeah, it's something I noticed even the first time I read it. I was like, because everything else I actually like how he draws. Like, it's not exactly Rini style, but it's being very consistent with her style.
Yeah, it's still very colorful and it's gritty when it needs to be. Like, it's good stuff. He's very clearly a talented artist.
Yeah, and then you got Nina. This is the backstory to Nina. He fucking killed and ate her mom. And then his heart melts because it's a little kitten. Come on. He's not going to kill it, guys. He's not going to kill it. So he takes it with him.
It's a classic save the cat storytelling.
Yes. Then he makes it back to the campfire, and then Dorvo's like, you made it. And also, like, are you going to breastfeed the fucking cat? What? Why you got a kitten? So, Casimir just basically wants to keep it as like a hunting, wants to train it and shit. And he's like, all right. But he falls over, sick and shit. And that's what I'm saying. I think it's supposed to be. He's like pox at one point. Because he has like all this shit over him through the entire thing. And he gives him an amulet. I don't think we actually see this in 1 and 2, do we?
If we do, I must have looked over it or something because I don't remember seeing it.
Oh yeah, he is wearing it. Never mind.
He is? Okay. And
It
it's
doesn't mention it. That's where he gets the thing he's wearing in the first.
okay.
But he's basically telling him someone who didn't survive, and he gives it to him, and telling him what the symbols on each side are, and basically also telling him that he needs to don't be him, leave the woods, get a woman.
I also hate to say it, but Dorvo here looks a lot like old man Kratos.
All right, say it in Kratos.
If I can do a Kratos voice.
Oh, you know
Let
what?
me tell you something, boy. Right now, you are young and strong, but the day will come after you have seen 1,000 sunrises, when even springtime will feel weary. There.
All right, now we gotta do it as Macho Man Randy Savage.
I can't do a fucking Macho Man Randy Savage voice, all right?
But he basically just tells him don't be a fucking shut-in. Get some bitches. Basically, his conversation with
Eat,
Casimir.
drink, shit, fuck, have a good time, live life to the fullest.
I do love this page. So Casimir hears knocking at the middle of the night and opens the door. Now, is this completely realistic? No, but is the joke fucking hilarious? That he opens the door and his little cousin is just a fucking snow pile.
Yeah, it is a joke, but it honestly threw me off a little bit when I read through it. I went, wait, is he frozen? Is he just supposed to be a wisp or something? Because the very next panel, he's just falling right into his chest right there.
Yeah, it's just a joke, but
it's still
the
funny.
First time I read it, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna allow that. I'm gonna allow this joke because it was just funny. But he grabs a hold of him. He's cursed, so he sees when his brother died. Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. The one thing I don't like is the tears in this.
This is actually one of the better panels that has tears in it. There were a few pages back that looked a lot worse than this.
Well, that's because they darkened out the coloring. The coloring was very blue on the tears as well.
Yeah.
But he basically just says that his mother left him and he had nowhere to go. So Casimir takes him in. And Casimir also has this thing where he's like, because in this book also he's trying to figure out what's his purpose, what's the point. And at the end of it, when he gets his cousin, he's like, oh, well, this is the point. I finally have something to fight for and shit. And all that.
It's a very hopeful and optimistic story, despite their own circumstances. And I'm all for that.
Yeah, it basically ends with him at the grave where he buried his master. And then Nina coming back. And then him and them going off. And it's him as an adult, because it switches from one panel to him as this age, which is, I think, 16, and to him as an adult on the next panel on the last ones. Here's the world map. But you got any final thoughts on the...
Oh, well, like I said, 2.5 in a lot of ways is kind of my favorite story thus far. It's not quite there's not quite as much to it as issue 2, but I still like how it feels like the story is a bit more fast-paced, sure, but there's more of a complete story arc to it. There's a good start, middle, and conclusion. I think that's a big reason why I like it so much. You also, admittedly, you can kind of see Irene setting up some things in issue 2 that are going to be called back here, but I do like the catharsis of that. There's a lot of stuff where you can point back to other issues and go, yeah, that was set up here. It's actually being paid off while I'm reading. I really like that. And I think the artwork, for the most part, barring some odd-looking tear effects, I really like the artwork, too.
2 is still my favorite. I think it's the best one out of it. I like how she's given distinct voices to each character and personality. Plus, I like how in the second one I am switching between their inner thoughts and shit. You know?
Issue 2 also has Yomi, and I really like Yomi as a character.
Why she just gets ripped apart in the third one.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I say that now, I'm going to be regretting it later.
Yeah, like I only have like even 2.5 kind of feels like she kind of like scaled back on having super modern kind of dialogue that the first one had. The second one in small parts, not like the whole thing.
I keep getting that feeling that with each issue, Irene is improving more and more as a writer. You get that feeling, like it seems like she is kind of like paying attention to her critics, listening to feedback. She's getting better with each release, which is, and I'm enjoying the result. I really like how the series is going so far. I hope it continues at such a good trajectory.
Yeah, so I know for the future, I know she is doing a 1.5 chapter, and I kind of feel like it's either going to be an E-School one or I think it's going to be E-School.
It feels like it would be E-School.
It's either going to be E-School or Yaomi. That's the two I'm betting on. Just because E-School, they can have you can have a story of his backstory of his curse and shit in his family.
Yeah, I have a feeling Irene would probably give us a bit more context for Iskel's backstory than she would with Ragna. I feel like Ragna is pretty high up on that list as well, but there's that big question with Iskel and the nature of his curse that drives everyone away from him. It feels like there's a story there. I'm not sure if she's gonna give more there or if she's still keeping her cards close to her chest there.
Well, I know because it is. I do remember her saying it's going to be 1.5 because these are supposed to be like little interspersed chapters throughout each campaign. I know the Fiendish 3 got split into 2 books now, and I do know what it's going to cover. She is doing a lot of monster designs, she mentioned, because the town is going to be the place they're at now with Ragna's place is going to get attacked by demons.
Okay.
Also, she is going to be doing something different. All of the artwork in this is digitally drawn in color, of course. I do know for Fiendish 3, she is doing digital pencils, but she's going to physically ink it. And she prints it out and physically ink it and shit.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that turns out. There are plenty of panels here where you can tell it is digital art, but it's very well done digital artwork. And I'm saying that as someone who normally doesn't like digital art all that much. Or it can feel good. It can feel good sometimes. At other points, it can look very overly clean and sterile to where it just doesn't really look all that great. But Fiendish, for the most part, is the exception to the rule. I really like how the artwork turned out in these issues.
I think the color really fucking also helps this book in its artwork. I think it really makes
so too.
And I do think when she you guys made her ink, I do actually think it's going to come out better if she is at least doing it digital pencils and then at least going over it with actual physical ink. I think it's going to come out really good. I'm hoping it does.
Yeah, and another good sign for this series so far is from everything I know about Irene and the team behind Fiendish, it seems like they're all still wanting to experiment. It seems like they're having fun with it. For me, that's one of the best signs of having bright prospects for Fiendish. So I'm looking forward to what they have. I really am.
I'm looking forward to the third one, which I don't know when it will launch. I would suspect sometime this year.
Probably.
The second one was fulfilled late last year. So
yes.
I'd expect to launch sometime soon. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing more of Ragna. I do like the little in between chapters. I think 2.5 was good. I just think Michael Rushbrook just fixed the crying. Learn that some more. Everything else was great.
I like how one of the first things you said was, I want to see more of Ragna, period.
Well, I do. She's got ginormous tits, man. And she's not ugly. She's actually drawn pretty.
Right, and I'll say this again and again till the day I die, but having female leads who are both hot and capable, actually strong, not like actually being strong women instead of anti-women or anti-men, like they will objectively be superior to the Rays and the Abbeys of the world, you know?
Yeah. This book, I mean, I've been recommending Fiendish to fucking everyone just because I really like it. I like the world building so far and the world she's built or made.
The only caveat I'll put in there is I know a few out there who aren't really into grimdark or dark fantasy. If dark fantasy isn't really your thing, then I could see not recommending this because it does lean pretty hard into sort of like the seinen manga influence, a lot of berserk inspiration here. So if that's not your thing, I can definitely see passing it up on that reason. Other than that, I can't really think of a solid reason not to check this series out.
So as of right now, I wouldn't even say this is dark fantasy. Like, there's nothing like I'd say would turn people off. Like, there's no grape scenes. There's none of that.
But it's certainly a grittier tone compared to other fantasy sagas out there. It's
Right.
I don't know. It's more of a tonal thing than anything else. It's not as noticeable as something like A Song of Ice and Fire or even Berserk for that matter. It doesn't go as far as they do.
Right. Yeah, here's the language and shit. And she does have the translated glossary for you to see what the fuck she was actually saying in those pages. I don't know if you noticed that, Otter.
Oh, I did. I did. It was something I really did appreciate. I like how it shows the actual English translation, then it shows more of like the phonetic pronunciation that of how you would actually be speaking their language. I like both of those things. I'm all about that.
Right. Well, I think this about covers it. I really like this book. Fucking go get it. It's on what is it, fiendishcomics.com. I think you can also get like a digital copy on like Global Comics Reads or something like that. App, website, whatever the fuck it is. Buy it. Anything you left to say, Otter?
Well, I can't really say much more than there's great artwork, there's great characters in this, some great action scenes, some great gore, and some magnificent tiggle bitties.
Alrighty, Otter. Well, it's time for wrap up. So, chill.
Well, if you aren't aware already, I have a Swords and Sorcery book out myself. It comes with illustrations as well, even though it is a prose novella. It is The Curse of the Star Raids, the first book in my Steel and Stormbright saga. Hard at work on book number 2 right now, but if you want a saga covering themes of brotherhood, weird magic, high fantasy, and also some nice tiggle bitties, be sure to check it out. It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all the major retailers.
Yes. All right, it's me. You can find me on Only Gremlins on Substack.com, and that's it. Next, the 29th of June, on Otter's channel, we'll be doing Berserk Deluxe Volume 7 with Frederick, Readout, Christian, and Stormcrow, I think.
It's going to be a grand old time. I've got some clips I've edited that I want to include as part of it. I think we're going to have a lot of fun.
Yes. Well, anyways, thanks for stopping by.
Godspeed, friends, and squeak, squeak.
Kaplaw, kaplaw.
The sun has gone to bed, and so must I. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Adios, everybody.
Goodbye.
In kaplaw.